So the other day I woke up and I was putting on socks and I can't find my matching pair. So I thought to myself, how many people actually take the time to find the matching pair? Or do they just go, if there's claws on my feet, that's good to go? So as it's 2025, I decided to ask ChatGPT that question. And then I thought to myself, would other AI model give me different answers? What's up, guys? It's your boy, Lucenta Cat, with background in philosophy and policy. I'm here to explore the human side of AI. If that sounds interesting to you, hop on and tag along. So in order to see if different AI models give me different responses for the same prompt, I've decided to come up with a list of different everyday scenarios that you may ask AI about and choose a few different models and see what their responses are. So for the models, I chose GPT-4o, Claude 3.7 Sonnet, Grok 3, and also Deepseek. Now, for the scenarios, the first one is the solve question that sort of kickstarted the entire process, which is a weird everyday question. There's some data involved. Usually they give you the answer in terms of the 20% of people do this, 10% of people do that, but it's also just a vibe question in general. The second is regarding facts, even so we probably shouldn't use AI for anything fact related, but that's what people use it to do. So one is kind of like easy to find facts. So I asked it about when is the Declaration of Independence signed, and I tried to gaslight all the AI in saying that they got it wrong. And then the next one is a niche fact. So think of any niche hobby you have, maybe like a parameter or some kind of measurement of a particular object that's kind of hard to find online. Let's, for example, say like a watch that's very limited and how thick it is. It's like you can't find that information on maybe Reddit forums, but it's going to be all over the place, so you can easily gaslight AI and see what their response are. Third one is creative writing. It's just a simple, if people can photosynthesis in this society, how our society gonna turn out. The fourth one is everyday situation with emotional component. So again, very simple in terms of the wording. It's just, I have a presentation for a class coming up. I'm super nervous. What should I do? So part of it is practical solution. Part of it is also like, is the AI trying to calm me down, or is it just gonna gloss over my feelings, right? The last one is kind of interesting. It's kind of role play. I know not a lot of people use it this way, perhaps, but essentially, I try to ask AI to be maybe a wizard or something like that, and then ask it questions to see if the response sort of fit in that mode throughout the conversation, the multiple back and forth. Now, onto the results. The first thing I did is just to count the word of each response. How long is it, and if it's consistent. So as you can see from the graph, pretty much in line except Grok, which have like a weird blip in 2B, but other than that, pretty much everyone is in the same ballpark. Cloud usually are a bit more verbose and just detailed in its answer, and then DeepSeek will give you a longer answer when it relates to something that's a bit more emotional and personal. Whereas GPT is kind of just a gold standard in terms of just in between everyone and maintain a decent level. So before we get into the results, I want to tell you a bit about how it's generated. So on the left side of the screen, I guess, where I have the response of all of my friends, how I did it is that I give them all the responses from AI without telling them which is which. It's just A, B, C, D, right? And this is their response to scenario 1, and this is their response to scenario 2. And they can rate all of them along the line of whether it's succinct, whether it's narrative, casual, formal, blah, blah, blah. And it's all 1 to 5. And then I basically just average out their score for each AI, and what you see on the graph is the final result. And my own personal belief and result is not part of this because I know which is which. And on the other side of the screen, you can see the result from Claude. Again, I didn't tell Claude which is which. I just give Claude a bunch of different response, and I say this is from AI A, that is from AI B, and please rate all of their response based on these parameters, and this is the result. What is really interesting is that I also asked Claude to take a guess in terms of which is which, and it got 3 out of the 4 wrong. I only got Grok right, and for a very dumb reason. So that tells you it is pretty hard. Now, on to the actually fun part. First of all, the result pretty much come out the same. It's pretty objective in that sense. And as you can tell, the first one, presentation, how succinct the answers are. Is it just bullet point, or is it more flowing and narrative? And for both my friends and Claude's rating, usually GPT is pretty succinct, where it's very interesting that Claude rate itself very succinct, even though most of my friends rate it as like not as succinct as GPT. And then the most narrative, the most just text wall kind of response belong to Grok. Absolutely no surprise if you used that before. Now, the second dimension is formality. So how casual or formal is the tone of the response? And keep in mind that in the prompt, you can see for yourself down in the description, I do not have any wording in terms of how the AI should respond. It's just a question, and the AI can choose to respond in whatever formality or style they choose to. So this is sort of their default personality, so to speak. And no surprise, Grok is the most casual, where it's a lot of jokes and sometimes slang that's thrown in. And Claude is the most formal. A lot of my friends don't like that, but that is the default setting. The third one is emotion, right? Is it very, very neutral, or is it try to be buddy-buddy and personal with you? And this especially shown in the questions that has a more emotional component, like I'm stressed about the presentation and stuff like that. Claude is the most neutral, basically just give you the facts, whereas other usually give you a bit more in terms of emotional response. And for what it's worth, Grok is the most personal in this regard, where it really try to comfort you and stuff like that. Whether you like it, that's another question. And what's the most interesting, I think, is the preference part. For all my human friends, they usually really, really like GPT. And in fact, all of them like GPT the most. And they all really, really despise Grok 3. So part of why this is so interesting to me is it reminds me of a video from MBKHD, I want to say years ago, but actually, as you can see at the bottom of the presentation, it's published in January 2024. Essentially, they did their yearly blind camera test where they have a bunch of phones and they take pretty much identical photos with them, and they post it on Twitter and Instagram, I believe, and just have the crowd rate which one they like more when they don't know what phone it is, right? Which camera produced the quote-unquote best photo. And if you look at the actual result voted by the people, clearly with a lot of the processing and computational photography going on in the background after you take the picture, it's not at all about the sensor size or your hardware. A lot of it is the style. People like the style of Google's photo and how it end up on the internet, right? How it look on your screen. And I think that actually really interestingly map onto the AI landscape in some sense. Now, how does this map onto the AI landscape? And for AI, I'm narrowly talking about these cloud AI LLMs. And I think first and foremost, it's quite evident that a lot of our analysis nowadays kind of focus on the technical capabilities. How many parameters does it have? What's the benchmark score? Is it faster? Blah, blah, blah. But there's also the experiential dimension, right, for an average user, because at the end of the day, it's a product. And I think for the average user, right, the default personality and style is quite important, which is the same thing with phone cameras. Of course, with more capable cameras and more capable AI, you can ask it to change its style. But the question is, how many people and what percentage of prompt they would use that feature, they would specify, or are people treating AI just as like a replacement of Google or like a personal assistant that's like box standard and just ask their question and get a response? In my mind, that's the more prevalent style. So the default personality is quite important for the user experience, because most people wouldn't bother to ask for something more. The choice of AI, I think, also reflects functional needs and emotional stylistic preferences. So I also asked my friends, what kind of response would you want to get in AI? Most of them prefer like a no-nonsense, just bullet point, give me the solution kind of response. But me personally, right, I like more cheeky response, more witty response, more funny responses. So that's also part of the just what do you like, right? And how can company choose one style versus the other to cover more of the population, more of the user base, so to speak. And I think the other two part is that as capabilities converge, style differences may become increasingly important because, let's be honest, for most of the regular folks, if you're using AI, of course, we want it to be more accurate and no facts and stuff. There's definitely stuff it can get better at, but for a lot of our use cases, it's pretty damn good already, right? So it could just come down to user preference in a lot of cases for a lot of people. And lastly, what's interesting is that just as this comparison or parallelism to camera, capability does intersect with tone in some cases, right? So for example, I have some super long chat, like hundreds of pages of chat with GPT-4o, with Grok, and also with Claude. And what I find out is that when you do these kind of role play sessions, if it's super long, Claude usually comes up on top during those sessions, just because it's much better at handling super large context windows. I think it can go up to 200K tokens, right? So in those cases, yes, it's not the most by default personal response, but because of its technical capability, it is quite suitable if you want to have like really long chats, right? And I think to sum it all up, default style and tone can be very complicated, right? Part of it is the architecture of the model. It's the fine tuning. It's also a business decision, product decision in terms of who are the intended users, what's their image looking like, and what kind of stuff do we think they care. Perhaps inadvertently, it's also changed while trying to solve for capability or safety or other issues that seems more important, although this might of course change based on how tech evolved. One of the paper I read recently is from Secure Capital, and it's talking about AI in 2025, these building blocks and sort of the business landscape. With OpenAI, part of it is also setting user experience in what an AI should be. And if we go back all the way to the results slide and looking at people's preferences, it's interesting to ask the question, are people liking OpenAI and GPT-4o like as their preference? Is that a function of it being literally the best, right? Striking a middle ground in terms of how personal it is, how succinct it is, blah blah blah. Or is it a matter of because it's first to market, because it has this commanding sort of market position that over the past like 2 years, people have been conditioned to think that this is what a AI assistant should be. I do want to end this whole thing talking about a few caveats because the parallelism between AI and phone cameras are not exactly one-to-one. I think first and foremost is that what we want from AI and what we think AI can do sort of affects each other, and then because of it, we have a quite diverse and individualistic preferences in terms of our AI, right? If you use AI mainly for coding, you want something different from if you want to chat with AI as if you are texting a friend, or for emotional responses, or for problem solving, or just using it as like a dictionary as a replacement for Google, stuff like that, right? And we haven't even gone into other similar AI services, such as Perplexity, right? Which is a more of a search engine replacement rather than a chatbot. So they're all situate in different niches and serve different functions. And unlike camera, which is a bit more uniform in terms of what people want and how people use them, there's a lot more diversity within the realm of AI. And I think the second thing is AI is evolving, right? Not saying that cameras are not evolving, but hardware versus software, one is much faster in its evolution. What's really interesting is that unlike in phone cameras where, let's say Sony, right? They give you a lot of manual controls, but you have to know how to manually control it. AI is different in the sense that in an ideal world, it can just learn your preference through interacting with you, and you don't need to tell it explicitly what do you want. It kind of just will know what you want by your behavior. And this goes into a really interesting distinction between how different companies treat privacy and personal preference, whether it's opt-in or opt-out. And based on what I know now and just my user experience, GPT seems to be OpenAI in this case, which seems to be the only one that used to opt out. So when you talk to GPT, it automatically record stuff and translate some of your questions and response into what they call memory, and you can check out what is stored in your profile. You can turn it off, but by default, I believe it's turned on. And also, it's not stored locally in your device. It's still stored with your account and on the cloud in OpenAI server, which is sort of concerning if you are for some people, which I understand. Whereas in the case of Claude and every other model, it's mostly just within that single thread and they don't store anything. So the downside of doing it this way is that, let's say in one thread, you tell the AI, by the way, I am a, let's say, 32-year-old male living in this country, and it's like a relevant piece of information for whatever question you are asking and the solution you are seeking. Then in another thread, you have to tell it again, right? It doesn't remember that. Whereas in the GPT model, it's like it does remember all of that, which is good and bad depending on how you look at it. And the lastly is that GPT-4o is also changing its tone recently, right? Part of it is that there's some evolution on the back end so that it can more readily respond to whatever style you are inputting. So if you're casual, its response tends to get more casual. It's getting really good at this. But also, if you use GPT, sometimes it will give you a prompt saying, hey, I've generated 2 responses for your question. Which one do you like better? And that your choice there would obviously influence the kind of result it gives you down the line. So what do you think? Do you think we're gonna see even more importance in terms of default AI style and personality? Or do you think as AI get integrated into our daily life and they know more and more about us or our personal information, that it's gonna be less and less important because it's gonna be tailored and personalized to each individual user anyway? Me personally, I think given the history of the internet, privacy is often highly overrated in terms of people's actual behavior. Most people will be okay with giving up privacy if it means more convenience. So in that sense, I think it's gonna get more personalized to the point where there is no default style because your AI will know everything about you, and there's gonna be like a tailored voice for your AI assistant. And who knows, that could be a dystopian future or a utopian future. That sounds pretty cool in some regards. But yeah, if you're interested in what I'm doing or just want to follow along to the journey of me exploring AI and all these topics, feel free to give it a like or subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.